Hi, everyone. Katie Grana here, program manager with This Is My Brave. And I'm excited to welcome Jovan Mays back for our second poetry workshop for Brave Days Mental Health Month. Jovan, thanks for being here again with us. Just so everyone knows, if this is your first time being in this workshop, Jovan did one last week as a starter to the series, so you can always go back and watch it. And see what you missed last week. But I'm going to hand things over to Jovan and we'll get started. So thanks, Jovan.
Yeah, for sure. Good. I don't know where you're at in the world, but I want to say good day to you. I would specify afternoon or whatever there to you, but good day to you. This has been a cool way to really fixate and focus ourselves on this beautiful month that is challenging us to engage in mental health awareness. And I was like I said last time I was learning about this, and I think this started in 1949, which is just so interesting to know that prioritization of mental health has been celebrated since then. Because even in my life of being a fairly modern human being, it feels like a newer concept or thing to be thinking about. So I am a poet and a arts educator, specifically in the realm of poetry, and I think about ways in which people could use some boost to express themselves all the time. I, as a writer, consistently um, struggle with trying to get my head around things. So I'm an overthinker, and then trying to get my writing around them is even a whole nother process. And sometimes, a big handhold you get in mental health circles is through therapy. And my therapist that I've had several therapists over the years, but my most recent one has just been fantastic in introducing me into this cognitive dissonance model that is a really, really simple four-pronged thing to think about with our thought checking. And this is going to be the basis of what we're going to focus on every time we're here together. So what we're always kind of seeking in our lives is to try to get ourselves to these truthful, helpful thoughts. And there are many things that keep us away from truthful, helpful thoughts. And oftentimes we have, untruthful thoughts that can be quite helpful. And those are really, really interesting things. In my opinion, that's where I think we kind of house our spirituality, is that it doesn't have to be anchored in a scientific fact as much as a spiritual fact that allows you to believe that that is, while it might be untruthful, it can be helpful. Last time we focused in on the ability to basically just provide someone your truest, honest self when you are asked a question how how are you doing? And the complexity around trying to figure out, hey, how do I tell somebody exactly how I'm feeling, or if that's even appropriate and what that would look like. And again, we have created opportunities for you to share from that first poetry workshop, any of the hashtags that you would extend to This Is My Brave, and I believe hashtag Brave Days, to show off that writing that you would have created from that time. This time around, we're going to focus in on a couple principles, and then we're going to graduate ourselves into a writing assignment. So one of the things that I think happens constantly for us in this world is that we feel unseen and unheard. And what I have experienced in my life is the misfortune of going to a lot of funerals for young people. And what I've commonly experienced in those events is someone is speaking for someone who really truly had no idea what their life experience was. And I think that oftentimes we're experiencing something that is different from what the world thinks we are, or from what the world thinks we're experiencing. And it's really hard to anchor ourselves down to be able to communicate from a space, to communicate out to that world, hey, this is who I am, and this is how I live, and how I'm trying to be the best person I could be. So before we dive into our assignment, what I want to show you is one quick resource. And this is a resource that I built several years ago. And this is what I like to call my bridge Word document. So a bridge word is really just a conjunction, okay? But we take a conjunction and we use it effectively, it can get us to the places that we want to get to as writers. So sometimes we're just missing our reason, or what I like to call our why. So if we're missing our whys, we just need to throw in a because to get us there. The same is if we want to investigate possibility, we throw in a maybe to get us to possibility. But gives us investigation, and gives us addition, or gives us options, like and as gives us comparisons, is gives us exactions, and sometimes gives us flexibility. So these are really, really key points when we creative write. Oftentimes, I don't know if you're like me, you find yourselves getting stuck. And sometimes when you get stuck, I don't know if you've ever been on a river before, but if you're on a river, you get stuck. Sometimes you got to just get yourself back into the flow. The river is still going to be running in that direction. You kind of got to get yourself cleared out of your snag. And sometimes these bridge words are really what helps well to clear me from a snag. And they also help us expand and blossom our writing in a really, really unique way. So sometimes I hear the difference between the poetry that I grew up learning, spoken word poetry, and I think the poetry kind of the older world is that there is an intentionality for the author to reach the audience rather than the audience being forced to reach the author. And this is really, really clutch to think about, because think about something like this. An old world poet might write a line like, "She is like a dandelion." And maybe you remember being in school and they'd say, "Oh, we have to annotate the poet's poem." And you're like, "Oh, we found out the poet's from Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, they have a high propensity of dandelions." And the girlfriend of the poet was a blonde person, and so therefore the dandelion must be talking about the blonde person. And you're like, "No." I don't know if it works like that for you, but it doesn't work like that for me. So sometimes I got to use bridge words to explain myself, to sort of unpack the suitcase that I just laid out there. So I could say, "She is like a dandelion waving in the wind." And maybe if I say that, you're like, okay, I can see a dandelion moving, but you still don't know if I'm talking about like that yellow head dandelion or like the white one that has like the seeds that blow away. Like, you don't know what I'm talking about. What if I say, "She's like a dandelion waving in the wind," sort of like we all are when we're waiting for the one to come along and pick us. Now we're moving places. Now we're using our bridge words to help us explain. She's like a dandelion waving in the wind, sort of like we all are when we're waiting for the one to come along and pick us. But oftentimes while we wait, parts of us get lost in the wind. Now we know the vision. Now we know the image. Now we know what was kind of put together there. So again, using these bridge words really, really help us when we kind of have that suitcase we need to unpack. We got to figure out which one to kind of add to our sentence to help us explain out what we're trying to say. Today, we are going to be blessed by a fantastic poet. This poet, I had the fortunate experience of hearing their work at the National Poetry Slam in 2011. And so I am going to just take a quick second to pull up this document because this is going to be what we're going to talk about today. So, Carvens Lasant is a Haitian-American international award-winning poet, actor, and singer. He currently stars in the Tony Award-winning musical Hamilton as George Washington at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood, California. Carvens is one of the best poets that I've ever heard inside of our slam scene, and he has been featured on the stages of TED all the way to NYU, and he's just a fantastic writer. And one thing that he really brought me to was this idea of writing a self-eulogy. Now, this may sound like a dark thing, like, oh, eulogy, you know, it's eulogic. I don't want to imagine death or dying. And that's not what really I'm asking. I'm asking for you to tell the world, how you lived your life and what your experiences was and who you were throughout your experience. And so to prime our kind of our poem for this week, what I want to do is watch a video, and I will admit that I'm going to probably grind through some technical difficulties here, but bear with me as I figure this out. And we're going to get a YouTube video and link up to you here to prime our conversation. So give me just 1 second to click here, and then I click here, and I click there, and then I pause that. Yep. And let me move a couple things over here. Yep, there's that. And remind me again, should I be headphone in or headphone out?
I believe you are going to want to be headphone out and unplugged so that
Okay.
the audio will play through, I believe.
Okay, let's give this a shot. And I'll also just go ahead and put this YouTube link in our wonderful chat that we got going in here. And so let's give this a shot. Share screen to a Chrome tab, to Carvens Lasant. Tell them you should be seeing what I'm seeing. That should be full screen. That looks nice. Now I'm clicking play. It's quiet for a second with a beautiful quote.
For the days when I wanted to die, I beg of you, before I'm 6 feet beneath the soil, before the maggots hug my flesh into a shivering carcass, speak of me as I am. Nothing false nor set down aught in malice. I pray that you will tell them that I died a proud man, that I was one who never spoke unless it improved upon silence. Tell them that I never moved unless it improved upon stillness. This here was no walk in the park. That life felt like a cigarette break during a one-night stand. There were mornings when I wanted to staple my eyelids shut because the sunrise was a horror film. I never wanted to wake up and tell them I wasn't perfect. Speak of fear. Speak of discouragement. Speak of the days when I shattered as loud as dynamite hissing through a funeral, how I danced through the gauntlets during day and still made it home in time to kiss my mother goodnight. Speak of gladiators. Speak of honor. Speak of the times when my eye sockets swamped my nights into a river. Tell them that I was honest and felt everything. Tell them that I didn't hide, that an army of hooded men with sickles introduced themselves to my front door and my fist was a pistol. Tell them that I was a righteous man. That I was my brother's keeper. I held my friends tight like the first drop on a roller coaster. Speak of loyalty. Speak of the wars us kings against demons. God like creatures with mild mouths as wide as the gates of hell, hijacking my serenity until it set ablaze like a church in the south. Speak of heart, speak of these greater arms that wrapped around the women I found paradise in. Tell them that I was one who loved not wisely but far too well. That I was never afraid to wear my heart on my outfit, and I adored the things that my wife would one day hate about herself. Tell them that I picked up my son every single day and told him he was a miracle, that my daughter had the spine of a daffodil. Tell them I kept it real. Tell them that I kept it funky. Tell them I kept it 100. Tell them I kept it G up and my feet up, that I was real rap raw in the flesh, that I rah like a dungeon dragon, that they try to lock me in a cage, and I regurgitated balls behind balls like bombing is the button. Devil try to lie to me, dancing in my brain, cut boom, it's lobotomy. Poetry is comedy, my homies on the side of me, saving lives, being kings, loving all the God in me. Tell them I found the Lord in this microphone, and I loved him. I loved him fiercely, that every single time I open my voice box, I reveal the truth. What is math? What is math? What is logic? There was only God. Tell them, tell them that I was monument. Tell them that I was scripture. I beg of you before I'm 6 feet beneath the soil, before the maggots hug my flesh into a shivering carcass. You tell them that Carvens Lasant was human.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I don't know if the same thing happened to you on my computer, but at one point in time, Carvens was so powerful that the computer's bandwidth couldn't even handle him. But I think that this poem is just such a powerful piece because it allows, and I think the poems that I find myself falling in love with the most are the ones that allow you the space to do some self-investigation yourself. And I think this poem really, really does that. There's some really, really cool things that Carvens is doing throughout this piece. One of them is that he's foreshadowing. And so I don't know if you know this beginning, foreshadowing gives a hint of what's to come later in a story. Foreshadowing often appears at the beginning of a story or a chapter, and it helps the reader develop expectations for the upcoming events. So you had the line, before I'm 6 feet beneath the soil, before the maggots hug my flesh into a shivering carcass. That was this sort of setup that he sort of bookended the poem there. I said, observe and possibly inherit using but as a clarifier / bridge word. So remember this line, tell them that I was one who loved not wisely, but far too well. So but gives, again, that wonderful piece of investigation that allows you to get deeper into your thoughts and into your words. And sometimes when you let those bridge words get even deeper, you'll say things that you would not even thought because of the way that your brain's putting things together. So it's really, really wonderful. And then also, just observe and possibly incorporating some of this beautiful creative imagery that Carvens is using, that his daughter has the spine of a daffodil with gleaming pearls in her irises. There's just some really, really fantastic poetic work that Carvens is using here to get us poetically. But what I want us to work on and think of with this poem is, how many times did we hear this poet say, speak of or tell them? I mean, probably upwards of 40, 50 times combined throughout the poem. And this is a poetry style that we see that I've fell in love with, and that I like to simply call an undulating poem, right? And to me, undulation is a thing that rivers do, and you're going to hear me speak a lot about rivers because I think they're really powerful, dynamic things. And if you ever watch rivers, especially our strongest ones, the ones that we talk about that have white water, those rivers are literally taking giant boulders and grinding them down into minerals. And we drink this mineralized water and we bottle it and we sell it like it's made of gold because it's a powerful thing. Well, sometimes in our own thoughts, right, in our own heads, we have these giant boulders that just sit here, and we don't get the chance to let our thoughts, grind them down into minerals. And that is the goal with this type of poem. So I like to call this an undulation poem, because you're saying the same thing at the beginning. You're saying the same prefix, speak of this, speak of that, speak of the times when, speak of the moments when, tell them that tell them that when, tell them that somehow, tell them that these things all have the same front, but we're grinding them down into these minerals that then create this beautiful poem. So this is our assignment for this week. I want you to write an undulation poem. Okay. And I want this poem to try to be a minimum of 12 lines. And as my poetry coach used to always say, once you feel like you're done, you've only just begun. And I want you to try to focus in on at least 6 lines that start with speak of or tell them. And again, think of this as like a self-eulogy. And please make sure that when you're doing it, that you're doing your best to try to dig in and really speak in the integrity and honesty of yourself, and really dig into this piece around making sure that all of you is seen, all of you is heard. And I really think that this would become a glorious, beautiful poem. And if you are able to construct something and then share it back out with our network, we would love nothing more than to hear that at hashtag Brave Days, or hashtag This Is My Brave, or hashtag This Is My Brave Poetry. So that's all I have for you on this Tuesday, the second week here during Mental Health Week. And I wish y'all the absolute best. Again, my heart extends out to the This Is My Brave community for doing so many fantastic things for me. I feel so grateful that I get to share some of my experiences with you. So best of luck to you, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.